How's it going, YouTube? Coming in today with another video, and today, guys, what the video is going to be the hot takes from Twitter that you all gave me and Eva. It's going to be a lot of fun to be able to go over these because there are some takes on there, let me tell you. We probably went through 100 or so. There's quite a bit. If you haven't already met Eva, introduce yourself.
Hi y'all, I'm Eva Lees. You can find me on Twitter as @Eva Lees. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be a really fun time. Going through a lot of these is definitely going to be quite the time because, like I tell you, we saw some, but some I really agree with and some I really don't.
True.
Alright, if you haven't already checked out my sponsors over at Imperium Duelist, Dragonshield, Gem, Cloud, RW, Grimoire, or ChainLink, definitely go ahead and check them all out down below in the description. Without further ado, let's hop right into our first topic. So the first one I have here is going to be from two different individuals talking about Mystic Mine. One person said that it should be limited. The other one said that it was low-key healthy, and that came from Trishula. So definitely a very polarizing card. Mystic Mine was quite the time when it was legal. How do you feel about Mystic Mine?
Should be off the ban list, but limited is definitely like activates like the sadist part of me. It is just like, yeah, that would be really fun. But in terms of being low-key healthy, no, I can't say it was healthy. The things that you would do with that card, the fact that Altergeist was a relevant meta deck for multiple events long after it had been power crept and before their support, to tell you a lot about Mystic Mine, that such a low power deck could succeed because of this one card.
Listen. Engage was banned. We had Mystic Mine and Mage Power that you could put on a Hayate and swing twice per game. That's kind of based, okay? It's kind of cool. But I don't know.
Striker players.
Yeah. I think that Mystic Mine was very fun. I know that's gonna be like, whoa, okay, that's your own hot take, but like it was very fun in the sense that like you could just drop it out of nowhere and just like look at your opponent and be like, yep, out it. But I don't know. It's still one of those polarizing things that like when it's legal, it's just scary. Because like the second that you run out of like your spell and trap removal, you auto lose. And I don't like cards in the game that are just like, you lose. I think that it should have had some kind of clause like Vanity's Emptiness. Like if something else leaves your board, then it dies. Something like that, right? Like it should have had like some other just ridiculous clause on it. But it didn't. It was just hanging out. So I don't know. I didn't really love the card, but it was fun in Striker specifically. Let's have an in-archetypal Mystic Mine for Striker.
No. No.
It'd be so much
No,
fun.
no, 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 no.
It'd be
No.
so much
No,
fun.
no, 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 no.
Okay.
Absolutely not. So you're saying like something that could be searched off Engage?
Yes.
Hell no. Are you kidding me? No. Let's move on to the next then.
Okay. Go for it.
So, Matisse says, we kind of already rotate. We've got the downsides of rotation. Decks are playable for a 6-month to 2-year period, depending on how dominant they are, at which point they're either banned, out, or crept. None of the upsides, the ability to bring power and complexity down. GGYGO, your thoughts?
So I've thought about set rotation for a long time, and it's kind of appealing because things don't just get banned, they get rotated out, so that infers that later on it'll be rotated back into a different meta, which is definitely interesting for even a deck like Tournament, where it's already so strong now that we can only imagine in the future like what kind of strong decks we're going to get. So rotating something old back in with all of its power into a new format where you're going up against like the new power seems like a lot of fun. But I think where set rotation really does fall, for at least for me, is that you have some of these old decks, right? That like Spiral, you have like Ritual Beast. You move these decks into a format in the future that's crazy fast. Those decks, it won't even matter that they get rotated in. Like, it literally won't matter at all. I do agree with the sentiment that, like, we're kind of already getting rotated because, like, the decks just get murdered and then we're on to the next one anyway. And then, like, I think set rotation is cool because you have, like, a set pool of cards that you keep regardless. But I also don't love it because you can't go back and find, like, Typhoon and play that card because it's just not in the format. So I think that set rotation loses a lot of creativity where just the format we have now like inherently increases it because you can go back and find all these crazy cards.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the beauty of the game, right? Is that you will go back and find Typhoon, you go and find Token Collector during the Sword Soul format. You just find all these different techs. Even the people who are doing like when Kashtira was really strong in the OCG, they're doing, what was it, Mushroom Man #2 or something? You know, the odd techs and everything is kind of what makes this game beautiful in some ways, as long as they're not the worst floodgates that you've ever seen, for the most part.
Been a few of those. Been a
Yeah,
few of
yeah, yeah, yeah,
those.
yeah, yeah. There's been a few of them.
All right, we can go on to next. Barring legitimate stun decks, the Yu-Gi-Oh community is too quick to label too many decks as being low skill. Even decks that appear simple like Flu have depth and mastery that takes time and effort that isn't far off from high skill decks everyone loves to rave about. Cap. Cap.
Cap.
Activate Shifter, flip Featherstorm, summon a skill drain. No. I just inherently do not agree. I think that you play a lot of board breakers and throw up a skill drain when your opponent's already on no cards, or activate Shifter, or activate Featherstorm. Like, sorry. Like, to me, that's just not skill. I think the stun decks are just what they are. They're stun decks. They're in every game, and there's always going to be some deck that you can just pilot and not have to even turn your brain on. And this is just one of them.
And especially if you want to take like specifically Fluenderies and talk about that one, you know, when it was first released in Burst of Destiny format and such, and then became more powerful when it got the quick play, it was surviving on the strength of its engine. It was surviving on the fact that it wasn't so hugely power crept by a bunch of these other ones. And as time goes on, Fluenderies increasingly wins more just by Shifter, by Featherstorm, by these floodgates, rather than actually the strength of its engine, its recursion, and everything like that. And you can see this in the deck list, that if you have a Fluenderies deck list, you're not going to see hand traps in it anymore. It's always thrust, and it's always something like evenly in the main, and it's gonna have a Featherstorm in the main, because they can no longer rely on just hand trapping their opponent and winning with their engine.
See, now, I think that the difference between something like Flu and something like Branded is Branded has a coherent game plan. Like, you can go Quem and loop Mirror Jade 3 times and set up a crazy board, or you can puppet lock them, which puppet locking is the same thing as like Featherstorm or what have you. Featherstorm is just ridiculous because there's no counter to it. There's no red reboot in the game. Red reboot to 3, by the way.
No, 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 no,
But
no.
I do think that a deck like Branded, where it has such a high potential to do well, not just from puppet locking, like we've seen list top without puppet, in where puppet is legal. I think that that's the huge difference between Flu and Branded, whereas like Flu is specifically just trying to do one thing and just shut you out of the game, whereas like Branded could either just play the game or they can puppet lock you. And I think that's what makes a deck actually good and skillful versus a deck like Flu.
Agreed. Boom. The draw 2 effect on talents is irrelevant like 90% of the time. Hand looping, and especially stealing a monster, are infinitely more useful. Yeah, I mean, this one is, I basically agree with all this. The hand loop effect is, I think, the most onerous one, because, like, I don't like having massive counterplays to hand traps. You know, I don't like Called by the Grave. I don't like talents to look at the hands. Like, I really don't like these cards in the format Crossout Designator as well a lot of the time. The draw 2 effect, when your opponent uses the draw 2 effect on talents, you're like, oh man, they're down bad. You know? If they're using one of the other 2 effects, then you're going to be like clutching your chest a bit.
See, it only feels good when they go to draw 2 if you like ash their desires and they talents to draw 2 and you're staring at a hand trap. So like no matter what they summon, you have like a Veiler for it or like something else to respond, right? I think that's fantastic. But there's other times too where like they go to draw 2 and I'm like, that kind of sucks because they're still going to be able to like dig for something that they need, right? So I think that this is true as like the draw 2 is like the worst effect on the card, but at the same point it's still pretty crazy. So like I wouldn't say it's like irrelevant because it's still another effect that you can just go after if you are in a bad spot. So I think that irrelevant's just the wrong word. I think that it might be less impactful, but it's still to a point where like if you need cards, you're still drawing 2. And like we banish 10 to draw 2. So if you can just rip a card out and draw 2, that's pot of greed. Hand traps ruined Yu-Gi-Oh! It turns a game of skill and playing around seeable interruptions into a guessing game of chance. All right. I'm gonna say this one time. I'm gonna say this one time. Hand traps are a necessary thing for the game, and you should check out Where to Hand Trap on this really cool YouTuber. His name is GGYGO. He puts them up every format, and he shows you how to be able to interact with other decks. So essentially, hand traps are just a way so you don't stare at a full combo and be like, I'm dead. Like, wouldn't it be so much fun to go against Infernoble and just not have a single hand trap in the game, like pre-Azole ban? Wouldn't that be a great time? No, that just sounds awful. Like, I'm good. I'll pass.
Absolutely. Yeah, for this one, I mean, hand traps have made so much of the game. I think it really has shown like the evolution of Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it is kind of a mechanic that separates Yu-Gi-Oh! From so many other games at this point. And the fact of the matter is also that you don't necessarily need to build a deck full of hand traps. You can in like certain formats and such, but in others, or against certain decks, it's not really optimal. So right now we have a very strong hand trap format because the Snake Eyes decks can play a lot of hand traps, but they also can be hurt by hand traps in a variety of ways. But decks like Fluanderies, decks like Branded, don't necessarily play those and can still break a board.
Yeah, and it's like even in Pokemon where you kind of just set your hand down and like look at your opponent while they play, and then you're like, "Is it my turn yet? Can I play?" Then you go to play, and then they set their hand down and you play. Sounds great. Sounds great.
Branded players are the best looking Yu-Gi-Oh! Demographic, featuring a pic of our beautiful boy, Maxime Solom. No. If anything, it's Labyrinth players.
I don't know. Tier players are pretty cool. That's, tier players are pretty cool.
I don't know about that. I don't know. I don't know. You know, the second I see someone activate Sharon, I'm just kind of like, did they just get like a little bit less attractive?
Wow. Wow. Okay. Okay.
I'm just saying.
Moving on.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Oh my god, this one. Oh, this one is so bad. Okay. Open deck lists would be better at regionals and above.
Okay, so I'm gonna tie this one to the VGC of Pokemon. So in VGC, you have an open deck sheet where like you can like deck their team roster, right? And you can see like what they're running. But at the end of the day, it's based off of their speed. It's based off of what kind of moves you're going for. And even if you see their team, you have no idea which ones they're going to pick and what order they're going to pick them in. So it's still fine. And I think that kind of info is kind of necessary for something like VGC because you have to have like some kind of game plan. But like in Yu-Gi-Oh, would you imagine if you were able to like win die roll, look at your opponent's deck list, see they're playing Unchained, and just summon a Dweller? Like, that sounds terrible. Because you have to have, like, the read, right? Or, like, just an idea of what you want to go for. So, like, if you do Blind Dweller, and then they look at you because they're playing Kashtira, and they're like, like, that sounds awful, too. So, I don't know. This is a horrible idea. This is so bad. I would never do this.
Yeah, this is probably the take that I saw that kind of made me like retch the most, I think this would be terrible in terms of like upsetting that balance of having decks when they're going second, right? As you've mentioned. Right now in like top competitive stakes, it's like if you win the die roll, you win 55% of the time to 45%. I think that's a really good place that we're at in terms of you still have that advantage when you're going first. But as we can see from the data, it's not hopeless going second. And I think this would kind of upset that balance because you don't want it to be neutral as to who wins the die roll because then it wouldn't matter, right? But you also want to be able to keep some level of the die roll being important.
I agree. I agree.
Boom.
Shifter is worse than Maxx. Floodgating entire engines with no cost and activation condition as a quick effect has got to be the worst design in a card I've ever seen. I mean, they're both a floodgate, right? Like, Maxx is like not like hurting you actively from playing, but like it definitely prevents you from doing more. There's a lot of decks out there that just play so many ridiculous things, and then they also have cards like Rock, so you play too far into that, and then you're risking a territory where you could just lose, because Maxi wouldn't matter in a format where Azathoth was legal. But I think that where they can just draw into 100 hand traps and just like stop you and still be up 10 cards, that's a problem. Um, I am by and large probably the #1 shifter hater in the community.
That's true. That's true. Your hatred runs deep.
It runs deep. But I do think that Maxi is still worse than shifter. It's still worse. I just would not want to play after a Maxi. It's just so unfortunate. And I cannot believe a 95% rate of play in Master Duel is still not enough for them to ban Maxi.
See, I think I disagree a little bit on this. I do, to some extent, think Shifter is worse than Maxi, but in terms of the fact that it can only be played by some decks, right? In terms of like actually the most unhealthy for the wide variety of the game, Maxi. But I do think it's unfair that these decks have this tool, and I also come at it from the idea of like a teaching tool. Because so many people, when they start getting into competitive, they pick up a shifter deck. Like right now, they've been picking up Flu, Kashtira, and such. And I think that shifter actively prevents a lot of people from learning a lot of things about the game. And it's not just like this deck-specific hand trap that, oh, you get to play this because you play this engine. It's not like Herald of Orange Light. It's much more powerful than that and much more meta warping. So to some extent, I do think shifter is worse than Maxi.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair. I also hate shifter. So I don't really think that either of them should be legal. So, I mean, that's completely fair. You could go either way. If I saw one of these cards banned, I'd be fine with it. But if I saw both cards banned, we'd be gaming. So, I mean, it is what it is for now.
The way I see it, Maxi encourages more hand traps to be played. Shifter turns off hand traps. So,
Fair.
just... Link 1s should be banned, and SP2. Any generic links that enable removal without a cost are bad for the game. So, first off, SP does have a cost. The inability to attack directly does come up quite a bit.
It comes up.
It
for
absolutely
sure.
does. It is important. And also, as we'll see in a take a bit later, I like SP. I think we're both pretty much agreement about that.
Card's amazing.
Link 1s, though. What do you think?
Link 1s have been the #1 offender for most links. So I think that they are pretty toxic most times, especially ones that don't actually have an effect on them. Meow mute. So it is what it is, but I don't think that we should have many of the Link 1s. I know a lot of people are calling for a Link Kriebel ban, which I thought was interesting. I don't know if I'd go that far, but there's definitely like okay Link 1s, but a lot of bad ones. I think they should always be generic. I don't really like the in-archetypal Link 1s because they're usually the most busted. But I don't know. I could go either way on it. I'm just very much so for like the competitive side of things. Like if I see a broken Link 1, I'm gonna play it. But you know, it's just like, is it too broken? The community's pretty split on that one, so I don't. It's kind of up in the air for me. I could go either way on it.
Yeah, I think with a lot of Link 1s, I think a lot of the problem started to arise when the facts of when you were going into Link 2s, you would have to use 2 bodies to be able to go into one. It was kind of funneling your resources into one thing. But the thing with the Link 1s, it's just basically a replacement. There is no, you get this advantage based off of this card that usually, like in Marincess or Adignister or something, it's these 1-card combos. And I think it kind of tunnels Yu-Gi-Oh into a particular design space that is overly simplistic, and it doesn't really encourage a lot of creativity for how decks combo, how they play into boards and such. Um, but it also enables things like SP. So I think it's a really difficult decision and should be kind of taken on a case by case basis.
I know a lot of people want World C-Band too. So that's technically a Link one, technically. But it is pretty broken too. How's it going, Gage? Ever read Clara and Rushka? Yeah, so we actually played that in Striker, I'm sure you know. Because we'd go main phase 2 and just go into that so we could play it under spellcasters. So that was really nice too. But the Link 1 pool is kind of crazy just because there's a lot of different options.
Absolutely. Take a look.
One card combos were the Pandora's box of Yu-Gi-Oh!
I think Control was already super oppressive before the advent of one card combos. In a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And it would have gotten to that point if we didn't have one card combos anyway.
So I think that control decks are only as good as the decks that they're trying to oppress. Because like certain decks are going to call for certain counters. Like right now, EXO is a pretty bad deck. EXO in tier format, not bad. Not bad. But like when it comes to one card combos, I don't know. I'm a fan of just being able to go, hey, I'm a normal summon as Armanite. What you got? You know?
Yeah.
So, it's one of those things for me where I don't think it's really like a Pandora's box. But like we already understand that like if you were basing your whole play off of a normal summon, sometimes you just get stopped on the spot. And it is what it is. Like you just play a lot of hand traps, you can counter it. But it can be really annoying if you're playing a deck like Branded and just have to watch somebody do a full combo, because that's probably where you're going to lose.
And I'm probably being quite subjective on this, but I really like one card combos for deck building because when you play a deck like Dino that basically only consists of card combos, it can be really frustrating when you draw cards like Baby Sarasaurus and then you don't draw the Oviraptor to go with it. You don't draw the Ground Zeno to go with it. These two card combos often results in hands that are just bricky in very strange ways. And I think it makes deck building really odd, especially for newer players. Because when I first started playing, I was playing Virtual World, which is a deck that can brick to high heaven often, and being able to figure out how to do that as a newer player was often quite difficult. And it's also in these one card combos that we're able to kind of streamline our deck building decisions and be able to equip more space for utility.
I agree. Let's move on over to the next one here.
I've been saying it since Halkban, Auroradon can come back. No. Auroradon cannot come back because we have a card that summons Jet Synchron from the deck. So you can just go into Barricade Borg Blocker or whatever you want, and then summon the Jet Synchron, and then be able to go into Auroradon and have the Synchro material that you need. And they did this in the OCG with Rescue Ace, and it was not always the most dominant build of it, but it was a very frustrating one, and it eventually became that dominant build because there's so much power that you can get off a card that is not terribly bricky.
Yeah, no, that's pretty insane. Auroradon would be crazy, especially in Rescue, right? Because after you already set 4, we're like, we're going to build a board now. Like, that just sounds awful.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Maxi needs to be introduced back to the TCG because even if I hate that fact, it is being designed around in the OCG and has caused us to have 2 Tier 0 formats they did not have. I think that's extremely cap, but like I'm a huge hater of Maxi as well. I think that Maxi is so toxic because it's one of those things where it's like if I start my play, right? If I go like normal summon and then I go to activate an effect and they go Maxi, I either have to set up the craziest board and then watch my opponent have 20 cards in their hand, or just pass. And that sounds actually terrible, because when you're going second, if you have a crazy hand, your opponent maxes you, you're going to try to kill them, most times. So it either promotes having floodgates around more so than not, because you can just flip a floodgate when your opponent gets back to their turn and just watch them not do anything, or it just promotes really unhealthy play. I really don't like Maxi, and I don't think that it causes a tier 0 format to not have it. It's just not correct.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the OCG results, they didn't just like, ooh, we didn't get like a tier 0 format at all. They had tier 0 tier limit. They had tier 0 Snake Eye Fire King.
And
So
rescue for a while.
and rescue. So it's like what so I don't really see how Maxx C really stops this. Because you know what's the wild thing, and I'm not sure if you know this, but the tier 0 decks can play Maxx C as well.
That's crazy.
I know. Isn't that wild?
That's crazy. And like one more thing on this too that I think is just like important to note here too, because like okay, Maxi is extremely toxic. We all know this. We don't love this card because it's just so dumb. The OCG limited crossout and put call by to 2 to try to let you resolve the Maxi. That's insane. Like that would never happen in the TCG. Ever. Like, that's so bad. But I don't know. I had to get that one off my chest because I hate that so much.
Yeah, I'm sick of people saying I miss blank format because more often than not, it entirely hinges on nostalgia / circumstance. And despite the usual claims of said format being good, it was racked with issues they either ignore or didn't have to deal with.
So I had a conversation about this the other day, and this is gonna sound weird coming out of me, but like, if we look back on TOS format, okay, we all love TOS format, but if we think about what was involved in that format, was it that good? I I like Striker, and I like to believe that that was like super fun in that format, but like double Colossus Titan pass and just like the things that we had to deal with in that format, I don't really think that it was like that fun. um but like if I look back on like tier, like I still enjoy like full power tier. Like I'll play anyone in full power tier. That's super fun. So I don't think that that's like entirely true to say that you can't miss a format, because some formats are literally just your format. And I think that some people can play this game for years and not get a single top, and then the right deck comes out for them and they just go crazy. Like, it's just their format, right? So I think that it's not correct to just be like, I hate when people say I miss a format, because like sometimes formats really were just that fun.
Yeah, I mean, even though it's only recently passed the late 2023 format, right after Age of Overlord came out, I think it was an exceptional, diverse format. You know, as far as diverse formats go, you had a lot of different decks that were highly playable. They had good synergies and counters against each other. I really like that format, and I think that's one that I'm going to want to be playing a lot down the road to see another rescue ace, you know, full power rescue ace versus full power unchained mirror again, or not mirror, but a match again. I really want to see those again.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
So, yeah.
Any deck is going to be unfun to play against when they pop off unimpeded. Hand traps make the game fun, and Ash Blossom is the best thing to happen to this game. I mean, I see where the sentiment comes from, right? Because, like, Ash is generically good and usually a 3 of in, like, every deck. So, like, yeah, it's solid that there's a hand trap out there that's, like, so universal and will hit anything from, like, anything ever. My biased opinion would be Tier was the best thing to happen in this game, Kit the one. But like, I do think that if we were talking about like what was the best thing to ever happen to this game, I would say probably priority being removed.
Yeah, priorities.
Yeah, because like we still have like a sense of like priority, right? But like not like it was. That was bad. That was like actively bad. So I don't know. At least for me, I think that we have moved in the right direction. I think now we're kind of stalling out. But hopefully we pick back up in the right direction soon.
Imagine if we still had first.
First turn draw was also very bad. It was also very bad.
Terrible, right now. It would throw things so out of whack.
It was right after a hat format that got fixed, right?
I believe so. Yeah, it was right before Duelist Alliance.
I remember when I heard that, and I was like, wait a second. You don't draw on turn 1 or turn 0. I was like, that's insane.
Summon JD, priority below the field. Exactly.
Yeah, no, that was terrible.
Sky Striker is not only not a good deck, and hasn't been since it got hit on the ban list, but it is not as skill intensive as people think, nor interesting at all. The fact that it was spoon-fed a year's worth of support recently and still isn't even rogue speaks volumes.
I'm gonna let you start with that.
I don't know much to say about it. It's Sky Striker is a deck. That's it.
Striker is one of the most skill-intensive decks you've ever played in your life, and I feel like you've never played Striker before if this is your take. Because if you play Striker and you're in a mirror match, it's probably the most chess mirror match you're ever playing. Because, like, there's so many things that you have to consider when you're playing, and when you're going to use Ray Effect to summon Kagari so that your opponent can't summon it, or, like, how many Kagaris you're going to use versus how many of your opponent's Kagaris you're going to use if they actually have to link into one. And then you can go ahead and, like, revive it. You have to know the order of operations that you do things. You have to know to do things like not send engage when you attack directly first. Send something different than add it in the end phase. So you can always stay up an advantage. There's so many things about Striker that were super skill intensive that, like, I'm just being honest. I don't think you played a day of Striker in your life. But it's very important to sequence things correctly, and it's probably the most skill intensive deck we have in the game.
Shout out Sentoki, shout out Brandish Maiden.
Go for it.
There hasn't been a single good competitive format since Toss. The games went on for longer, and being able to out your opponent's boss, losses can stay at 0, felt more rewarding, and the skill range required to play was infinitely wider.
Okay, but why did they contradict themselves?
Yeah, they're just like, Toss was the best format for years. Colossus can stay at 0. You know, Colossus is a part of that format.
I heard that it was at 3 in that format.
Whoa. Oh my gosh.
And they're saying that the format was amazing, but Colossus can stay dead.
Then it's not the format, is it? I think so.
Sounds like a skill issue.
I'm a Thunder Dragon player.
I think that it really is what you make it. Because, like I was saying earlier, there's so many different decks out there, and some formats are just your format. And I think that if you don't believe that there's been, like, a single competitive format that's been good, then you might not have been a part of that format, or you might not have been interested in the deck that was being played. Because people who actually played in that format or got a top in that format would say vastly different things.
Yeah, I have mostly good things to say about most formats of the past 2 or 3 years. Maybe not the one for YCS Philly, whereas Rise Heart was still legal, and you had the Super Heavy Samurais that just come out, and Philly still had all their quick plays. Other than that, I think there's a lot of good to say.
Yeah. And that's that. How'd you feel like it all went?
I think it went pretty well. What do you think?
I liked it. I thought it was fun, just because there's a lot of takes, but we had to cover them. We had to talk about them. So if you haven't already checked out my Discord, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, or my Medify page, definitely go down below in the description. And then also, if you want to check out Eva Lees on Twitter or Twitch, I'll link those down below as well. Any final comments?
Lift her to 3.
Lift her to 3?
Lift her to 3.
Reboot to 3, kit the 1.
No.
we're fixing this game, baby. Also, let me know how you feel about, like, the podcasty couch setup. I think it's pretty fun. It's pretty cool. But everyone have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you later.